Welcome back, everyone. I'm Lee. You're Ben.
That's right.
And together we are the Prop Room podcast.
Yeah.
Thank you for tuning in. Today's guest, I've known for a short while. We've done a couple of jobs together now, haven't we? But you've done way more jobs.
I think we're getting on close to a decade, I think.
Decade relationship.
Yeah.
I would think it's more than that, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I check periodically. Sometimes I think it's 8 years and then add a bit. So a decade and a bit.
It was about 2010, which would make it 16 years.
16 years. So our guest today is James Battison.
Me, I think.
Production buyer. Action prop buyer.
Yes. Amongst other things. Yeah.
So I think we'll start from the beginning, really, is probably the most obvious place as to how you got into film, what your education was like. So just walk us through that from the very beginning, like the early days of when you wanted.
It comes in two distinct parts.
Okay.
And that's an interesting kind of question of how do you get into the UK film industry if you've got experience but you don't know anybody?
Mm-hmm.
You're still stuffed.
Yeah.
So I started my journey in film in Hong Kong in the early 1990s.
Okay.
So I, amongst other things, taught Jiao Xing-chi, the guy that made Kung Fu Hustle, Stephen Jiao Xing-chi.
Okay.
I taught him English for a period of time. Various friends of mine, one of my friends was Jackie Chan's personal assistant. I knew lots of people in that kind of world. Hong Kong's quite a small place.
Right.
So I started doing product placement as a thing. A friend and I had various products that we were trying to push. And so it's like, well, let's just do it for ourselves. And I started doing that and that expanded out. So I put a Kirin beer, Ichiban, into a Jiao Xing-chi movie, which is hilarious. It's called The $60 Million Man.
The
$60 million Man. It is available on DVD. I've got a copy of it. It's hilarious, really low budget, low production value, but very, very funny, quirky movie. So I kind of cut my teeth doing that and then decided that Hong Kong was a bit too small. I kind of got over it a bit. So I came back to the UK with the intention of I love the movie industry. I want to work in movies. And there was nothing. I knew a couple of people here.
Right.
The one person that I was introduced to, particularly Mark, is a second AD, but on big movies. And, he can't get in his role.
What age were you approximately?
Would have been 22, 23, I suppose.
So young, sort of. Yeah.
So at that point then, well, what can I do? So I started just doing whatever. So I got work in broadcast PR, went off down that route. And then there was another opportunity in about 1997. I found a global product placement company and I thought, oh, here we go. Right, I might get a chance to do this. So I talked to them, got something going, and I learned another big life lesson, which is that when you think you've been offered something and you go, I got, in theory, in my mind, offered a job to work for them, went off to meet their people at Pinewood, and clearly they didn't like this young upstart. And so the person I met, but basically put the kibosh on it from, even though the boss had given me a job, they were like, oh, I don't like this kid, don't give him a job.
Doesn't fit. Yeah.
So I ended up without the job that I thought I had. So in 1997, I, with almost no money at all, got a train to Cannes, and I booked to stay in a caravan, and somebody that I knew from Hong Kong was there.
Right.
So I went to see him first. He went, don't stay in the caravan, stay on my boat in the harbour next to the Palais.
So you dropped the caravan.
I mean, literally right there. Never even saw the caravan. Don't even know. It was up the road.
It's probably really nice.
It probably was.
Toaster,
in
kettle.
Juan-le-Pin, which is basically where people go if they can't afford to stay in Cannes. You stay in Juan-le-Pin. So I stayed on his boat in the harbour and helped launch Fashion TV, which had a party there. That was where I told you Dennis Pennis turned up.
Oh, that's right.
And was trying to catch Danny DeVito out. And there was all this stuff going on. And obviously, if you're, the French didn't know who Paul was, but I did. So I could take him out of character and go like,
Yeah.
Paul, I know who you are. Like,
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
nobody here, blah, blah, blah. So that was a really interesting experience. And then instead of taking the train back, I was given, various things I had to carry back with me. And I flew back on a plane via Brussels to Southampton, where I was staying with my mum, in this tiny little aeroplane, all paid. And so it was
With a load of
beautiful.
chickens.
With a load of
in
chickens.
the back,
I'd gone with the intention of, I had various contacts from Hong Kong. I was, to try and get into the film industry again. And, fate sort of took me off, no,
Right.
you're not going to get
Not
into movies
now,
again.
yeah.
Not now.
Yeah.
Because there was talk of me going to work in publicity in LA. There was somebody, to meet and, and it just never happened because before I got there, it was, no.
Yeah.
So that took me off into sort of telly world for a bit, and then I worked in some other aspects of television and production.
What were you doing in TV then? What was the
It was
roles?
kind of developing ideas, marketing things. I'm not really a salesman, but it's something that seems to, people put me into.
This isn't working on set. This is working in an
No,
office
this is
somewhere.
working in offices and
Okay.
and production companies and
Right.
selling rights and that kind of
Okay.
stuff. So I was working for a couple of TV companies that were linked, and at that point, I had an idea, my bosses got involved, and we created something that ultimately didn't happen. We could spend the rest of this hour talking about that, but it's not really relevant in a lot of ways. But that took me off down a route of multimedia, messaging, social networks, those kinds of things, and that then kind of took me sideways, and then came back round to a point where I met Ben. Really, I ended up by accident having venues because my neighbour happened to have a space and said,
Right.
"Oh, why don't you come?"
So London Bridge.
So what the world sort of moved around in circles, and I ended up in London Bridge. I ended up with railway arches underneath the
Did you
station.
know where you
and
wanted to
everything.
be at this
No,
point?
not
Or
at all. And
you're still finding your feet, and you're still trying to find.
and the psychological things of thinking, and it was literally between one day and the next.
Right.
Circumstances completely outside of my control. A business, what would have been a massive, high-profile global business with famous business partners and Sky and Orange as our backers, the city that were run. This is at the point of the dot-com bubble, so I was being wheeled into investment banks
Right.
as the cool, groovy kid who's got this great idea. The next day, it's all gone because of things completely out of no invalidity of the idea. It was
Circumstances.
simply circumstances. Ofcom caused something to happen, and that chain of events caused our idea to be kicked to the curb. So it took about 4 years for me psychologically to get any straight place in my head. I then fell into having spaces in London Bridge. I started then trying to work out, well, what do you do with a event, not much dissimilar to this size of room. What do you do with it? And there's an element there of dressing that comes into it, buying things, interesting things, collecting things, and making it interesting for people to be in.
Yeah.
And that's where that side, that creative side of thing, the purchasing side of things started. So that was where I started going to market.
Have you always been
and
creative?
places.
Or
Yeah, absolutely.
you have?
Because I can chime in a little bit at this point, because simultaneously at the same time, I'd been in London probably for a couple of years, maybe a little bit longer, and was trying to figure out a way to kind of evolve a little bit.
Yeah.
So I was trying to start to find a way to do pop videos, essentially, that was still kind of was still a thing. So I was signing up for like next to no money to do music videos. And one of those music videos was in the arch that James had.
Right. Okay.
So like my total budget for that music video was £200. I had no money for a van or anything like that. So I was literally like finding stuff on the streets, driving up to my family home in Wolverhampton and like raiding the living room for bits of furniture. And this music video was all sorts of things. It was a hospital set, then it was a something else, and then it was a something else. And it was like, this is not possible for £200. So we arrived at the venue, and quickly James introduced himself, and we started talking. And then as we were walking around the different rooms and spaces that James had. It was like, oh, that chair's nice.
Mm.
Can I borrow that stool for a minute? And then it was like, oh, but what about that little table over there? Can I use that as well? And it was like, but you haven't got any like medical syringes anywhere, have you? And he was like, oh yeah, I've got some of those in the back, down the bottom. And it was like,
This-
great, can we just
this,
go and
by
grab
the
those
way,
as well, please?
This, by the way, like jump forward, as we've just determined, 16 years. The title for my autobiography, which I've started now working with ChatGPT to sort of structure, and ChatGPT is interviewing me in order to kind of get all of the information
Okay,
out
interesting.
to create something, is called, I think I've got one of those,
Right.
with the subline of another man's shit is, sorry, one man's shit is another man's prop hire business.
Yeah.
Because since that point, I've been collecting things over
Okay.
time and buying.
Where
them,
is your
not
interest
just in-
taking you then? What's like,
It doesn't
obviously
really
you can
take.
collect,
It's not in any specific direction, really.
not
It's-
particular genre of stuff. It's just a
I-
general
I
appetite.
I
for-
tend to be I suppose I probably tend to be drawn to interesting 20th century things.
Okay.
So I particularly like hole punches and staplers and
Yeah.
desk tidies.
Got a lot of hole. If anyone needs a hole punch,
Yeah.
He's the guy.
Well, no, and the
You got a
staplers.
2
I mean,
hole punch, 4
the
hole
funny
punch?
thing, all of them, big, small, like thick paper, like the works. You can always find them. And what I find hilarious is we go to flea markets whenever we're on holiday. We're in Sweden, we're in
Yeah.
France, Germany. Every flea market, there's always a hole punch and a stapler.
Yeah.
Always. And the price.
Well, we don't need them anymore.
The
so it's-
price is pretty much uniform. So if in
Right.
Europe it's €1, in
Yeah.
here it's £1, and it's the same thing. You look at the box of stuff and it
Yeah.
really doesn't look any different. a
what
lot
we
of the
need
time.
now is someone to write the feature film about the guy that invented the first
Hole punch.
hole punch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're
Just
I mean,
one
we're-
punch.
yeah.
And he
Yeah.
Yeah.
went in to develop the 2 punch
Yeah.
and then the 4.
And then all of a sudden they're all over the world, and he's on an
No,
island.
I think I've
smelling
got.
gas
I think
gas.
I've recently got one that's got an adjustable, so you can actually change the distance between the holes.
That's primo punch. That is.
Yeah.
That's primo.
Yeah. that's
So
really
you're
interesting.
collecting all these items.
Yeah.
Gravitating towards slightly maybe a bit of stationery.
Well, that's to some degree that's more recent in the sense of now it has a more guided purpose in all.
Yeah,
as
'cause
a
we can
business,
travel
it's
back in
all
time a
action
little bit.
rods.
So
Yeah.
let's go back in time a little bit before we get to there. Then.
Yeah.
So the Archers, we've
Yeah.
met, we've shot a music video. You've got a whole bunch of stuff off a list of
Yeah.
100 things that I couldn't afford or couldn't find.
Yeah.
At which point that arch then took on a more significant,
Yeah.
a
Are we allowed to tell people your relationship with that particular arch as well?
my relationship.
Yeah. Ben slept
Oh,
in
I
his
might have
car
I
like
might
a
have
period
lived
of
there a
period
little
of time.
bit,
you
yeah.
know?
I think we've
He
all
lifted
been-
out of his car. His Toyota Corolla was parked. I mean, it was incredible for nothing.
It was a Nissan
This is-
Niro, I think. at
Was
the
it
time.
Nissan?
Yeah,
I was
that's
so,
what
so
split hairs.
sorry. I'm so sorry. So it is, I suppose, an illustration of underneath the gruff and annoying persona. I obviously have some charm because I managed to get myself 20,000 square feet of railway arches underneath London Bridge Station for nothing for the period of about 4 years, after which Network Rail paid me a really quite large sum of money to give them back when they owned them in the first place. It was stroke of genius.
Okay.
But basically, I had these quite. The one where I met Ben was quite studio like. We'd painted it. It was lined. It had a nice concrete floor. The one over the road was Dickensian, and it was crumbling and
Like a proper Victorian,
Yeah,
like
it's-
you would imagine an
yeah,
arch to be.
and it was a labyrinth of half a dozen, and so sitting on it, going, well, what should we do with this? In the end, I decided we knew that we were going to have to give it back. Network Rail were doing the station redevelopment, so
Yeah.
we've got a timeline. What can we do to make the most of it? And so we turned it into a Victorian music hall with a heavy theme. Everyone had to come dressed up. The whole thing was based around a character. My character was this elusive person that no one was ever supposed to meet. They weren't supposed to know because I didn't like people coming up and talking to me, really.
Right.
So Victorlation was a secret. He was the host, but nobody knew who he was. And that really started the idea of generating props and dressing and going off down a route.
I mean, we could probably post
set
some photos
decorating.
on
Yeah,
the link
yeah.
online
Yeah.
because there was actors in there, I
Oh, gotcha.
remember, and music and stuff. So it was quite an immersive.
Yeah.
We had a historian turn up once and come and find me. Edwin, who was in this room but hasn't obviously been interviewed, but he was here earlier on with May. He was running it for me in character, bless him. And we had a historian come in who found me and said, this is the most accurate representation of a Victorian music hall that they'd ever been in.
Okay.
Because it wasn't dressed as a theatre. It was very much benches, people all jumping in together and singing along, and the interaction with the crowd. It wasn't performance in that sort of, oh, look, darling, this is theatre. It was gritty and messy, and everyone was sort of drunk and falling over. And that was, you know, she said,
That's how it was used to be.
It must be quite nice to have had that tap on the shoulder to say, like,
it was fabulous.
what you've done is perfect.
One of the key moments. So for our last week, we booked Chaz from Chaz and Dave. So Chaz and Dave would cost us £8,000. Chaz and Friend cost us £1,500. The exact line was, "Fuck Dave." Dave. So we had, my dog's called Dave. And so Chaz, there is a photograph of Chaz, me, and the dog, and Chaz looking a little bit, Chaz Hodges looking a little confused, and it's like, no, it's Chaz and Dave. Like, we thought it was hilarious. He didn't know what was going on. So we booked him. We had a variety of things going on, and we had burlesque performance, we had comedy, we had singers, we had various things. And the burlesque performance on our last night was as Britannia. So we had to find a trident and a Union Jack thing. So for the last night, I was on German Street buying myself a new pair of shoes, I think, because, you know, at that point I had mutton chops, was wearing waistcoats and watches.
You were just in character.
I mean, it was all the time. It's like really
living, breathing.
Yeah. And so, but basically I was walking around all these very, very upmarket shops with a plastic trident in my bag, and it was peeing with rain, and I ran into a shop and some, you know, it's very much suits you. If you've been to German Street, everywhere is very much like, suits you, sir. Good afternoon, sir. How may I help you today? And it's still like that. And I love going there for work and buying things. Anytime I can find an excuse, a wash bag, a hairbrush, whatever, I go to German Street.
Okay.
Good afternoon, sir. Can I compliment you on your trident, sir? Thank you very much. Yeah. I mean, you can't pay for it. So that was sort of 2012 into 2013. We had to give the arches back, but Network Rail, in a fabulous piece of whatever, gave me a bunch of money. So that then sort of flipped things along. So then
all the props you owned, they sort of came with
they
you?
They moved into an arch. I had, if you go down, I had a whole
flexibility.
I mean, literally had. At one point, I almost had an entire street there in terms of 4 railway arches and a venue on the other side of the road. So I got some friends together, and we put a business together in the same vein. Lots of dressing, you know, very highly stylized. Which was
another sort of immersive experience.
Yeah, 1920s. That didn't quite work, and it was partly because, you know, I'm not a businessman in the sense of, you know, I trust people. It didn't work with some of the relationships with some of the business partners. There was friction. You know, things didn't work out, and I'm not strong enough as a person to basically go, no, this, dum.
Yeah.
You know, I was caught up in the creativity, and I just thought
it takes the fun out of it sometimes.
Yeah. And also the being around drunk people and dealing with drunk members of the public is actually it's a unique challenge in itself.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that led on to a series of those things, really. But I guess in about 2014, alongside having those spaces, a neighbour from London Bridge is a production designer, predominantly in scripted TV comedy.
Right.
and also what he would call shiny floor shows.
Okay.
So Rich was doing Jonathan Ross. He did In-Betweeners, various things like that. So he called me up, and it was about half an hour after I'd seen an advert for the last ever Monty Python gig at the O2. And I was sat there going, God, I wish I could buy a ticket to go to see that. And then I get a phone call from Rich going, hey, do you want to come and work with me at the O2 at the last ever Monty Python gig, and we'll pay you? I was like, that sounds like a really good deal. Yeah, I'll do that. So the two of us went and dressed a backstage room as a sort of green room where various people were interviewed, and it was used as interstitial stuff on UK Gold because they were broadcasting it. So when they cut to commercial, they'd cut away and they have these little interviews with people. And we had one of life's really hilarious experiences where at the time I wasn't familiar around set. It was, I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. Rich had gone to the loo, and there's a scream of art department. Some young comedian had tried to get to Stephen Hawking and had got a bit overexcited and had knocked the Spanish Inquisition, the Cardinal's coat, which was on a mannequin on a box, had knocked it over. And so it had fallen, and it was he was holding it and stopping it from falling onto Stephen Hawking. So I get this art department. Rich is having a pee. So I'm going, well, I suppose that's me. So I run in, and I basically get my hand up underneath the Cardinal's cassock, and I'm trying to get it onto the plinth, and I'm sort of holding it there.
Yeah.
And as I balance myself, I realise that hand has gone onto Stephen Hawking's foot. Right. So then Rich arrives with some gaffer tape, and I'm sort of underneath the Cardinal's cassock, like taping the thing to the box. And obviously then walk out, and the line was, nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition, but said in the robot voice of Stephen Hawking, which I'm not going to do as an impression now. At which point everybody like falls about laughing. So that started this dual process of doing a little bit of work here and there on set, generally with Rich being a sort of secondary art department everything, because the shows were a little bit of everything. So for comic relief, I ended up doing a little bit of action prop buying because I got given a challenge. Right, you need to make that look like that. Right, fine, I'll go off and I'll find the bits that I need to do that. So,
and where are you going to source these bits?
Well, that was in. So I was so that was. But that particular challenge, we were at the Palladium, and he's like, there's 50 quid, go and sort this out. So I had to make the box there, the royal box, look more regal. So I had to go and buy sort of tassels and bits of gold and whatever. Which there, you go to this place in Margaret Street, there's literally all of the fabric things that you can ever imagine, tassels and ribbons and whatever.
And you go and barter for what you want. And...
Well, yeah, it's not even that. It was just, it wasn't really that expensive.
Right.
Staple gun, bit of glue gun, stick it up. And
but it's all, I guess the key bit is all about just knowing where you are, I suppose, as a buyer.
Yeah.
Is if you're plopped in the middle of nowhere, where it's...
I think the thing about that is that I'm, I'd lived in London at that point for sort of 15 years. I know where things are, and I,
so fabric district,
Yeah, I know that if I need something, I can go to, that street or that road. I don't think it's as easy now because I think there's a lot of places that have shut.
It's all
your high street shop.
Online, isn't it? Really.
Yeah, which is depressing. And yes, it's convenient to some degree, but then if it doesn't arrive at the time you need it to arrive, you need to be able to get something on the day.
You still need to have that secondary skill, don't you? Of being able to go out and do it.
Yeah. So the next challenge was the Comedy Awards in Wembley, and being sent out with a £50 note to dress a backstage area to make it look like the posh house from Gogglebox.
Oh yeah.
So they had a TV and they had a sofa, and that was it. And so I took a screenshot of, right, this is kind of what I need it to look like. Very, very closed view. So it's, it's a fixed camera view.
Yeah.
I need to dress
the camera.
that, blah, blah, blah. So I went to TK Maxx in High Street in Wembley, and they had just the number of things. So I came back, put them on the wall and thing. The posh couple came in and sort of looked, and he was a little bit sort of like, oh, I suppose it looks a bit like our house. So I said, come and have a look through the monitor. And then he looked through the monitor, and because it's, it's framed to camera, he went, oh my God, oh, it's our house. Oh, that's amazing. Oh, it's so it was those kinds of challenges I quite enjoy, and in some ways I slightly miss about working on bigger productions with bigger things, because it's by committee. There's a lot more sort of
there's less chance to go like Cavalier style.
Well, and when we interviewed May, she was saying a similar thing about doing shorts to big stuff. It gives you a chance to be more creative and just play jazz a bit. And really sort of put to use these skills that you've honed.
And you've kind of built all of that stuff up over time, and the ability to problem solve by calling someone up, going, oh my God, have you got an X, Y?
If you don't know someone, just make sure you know a bunch of people that.
I mean, that's something that throughout my life has always been a 6 degrees of separation. Right, I'll phone someone. I mean, it used to be, but pre-internet, I remember acutely when I worked in PR, people in the office would come to me going, James, I've got this problem. I'd go, right, okay, fine. And it would take me 3 phone calls to find the piece of information that I needed, because I'd phone the German embassy, and the German embassy would tell me, oh yes, what you need to do is speak to this person. Pre the internet, and people would answer the phone and they'd be helpful. Now it's almost impossible to get anybody on the phone.
Totally.
Which it presents its own problems. So
we are slightly being funneled into that system where
I mean, it does make it's interesting. I guess we can kind of come to it at any point, but the idea of where we're going to be with our jobs with AI, if you try and research a lot of the stuff that I'm doing, it doesn't exist on the internet. So an AI cannot research it, because unless somebody's posted an image of something,
it only spills out what has been told.
It doesn't know about physical things in the world. It only knows about virtual things that so somebody's posted something on Instagram or Pinterest and claimed that it's a 1920s stapler. Well, it isn't. It's just that somebody's called it a 1920s.
They've guessed it or something.
Case in point. In 2016, I created 2015, created a Peaky Blinders themed event called the Tic Tac Club, to the point where Tom Hardy, Stephen Knight were complimenting us. It got into the press all over the place. It was pre-season 2. It was after season 1, pre-season 2.
So early doors.
Again, living the life. I had the really stupid fucking haircut. The fade and all of that stuff. Which
there's some pictures of that we can get on to the video.
Oh my God. Anyway, so we kind of lived that life. I'm trying to think what the point I was trying to get to there.
Like mislabeling something.
Oh, that's sorry, right. So when we did our promotional photographs, we got a bunch of people dressed up in tweed. We put them into the most dressed part of our venue, and we took some photographs. And I've got, I know some friends who are quite talented photographers. So really lovely photograph. At that point, because Peaky Blinders hadn't really hit its height, season 2 really started its stratospheric height. Those photographs, if you did a Google search of the real Peaky Blinders, you'd get the mugshots of the guys that were the real Peaky Blinders. And then you got a photograph of me, my friend Johnny, and a couple of girls sat in my venue. Cut forward about 2 years, and in Devon, this guy had opened a Peaky Blinders themed thing, and I was at my parents' and I thought, I'm going to go and have a look at this supposed Peaky Blinders themed bar, and I'll go to antique shops and I'll sort of mooch about. So I walked into this place, and the guy wasn't there at the time, but they said they'd call him and get him to come in. And as I was sat talking to him, there's a photograph of me on the wall as dressing, purporting to be. There's pictures of
An
the
original
Peaky
Peaky
Blinders
Blinder.
that he's taken all the pictures off the internet of the real Peaky Blinders. I said, do you recognise anybody on that wall? And he looked at me and he went, well, that's you. I went, yeah, that's me.
There's a great story of
Doesn't
how
it doesn't appear anymore
Yeah.
because there's so much stuff that comes out,
It's
and
got
obviously,
flooded, hasn't it?
well, yeah, and the internet. Going back to what we were saying about researching things, you try and search for something, and what you'll get from the internet is what you can buy related to that thing,
Yeah.
not what's the background information of it.
okay.
So one of the big things from a buying perspective is that I am out all the time buying reference books on things.
Right.
So if I ever find a book
Not
on
buying the necessarily items themselves.
Oh,
but
well,
buying the
at
book
that as well.
tells you about this is everything you need to know about
watches,
Victorian lamps
clocks,
or whatever.
yeah,
or yeah.
lighters, pens,
Yeah.
walking sticks, any
Okay.
book that's the history of.
Yeah.
And Alice and Fiona were very much, particularly Alice Felton was who was the set decorator on Cruella when I was making a transition in about 2018 from
Yeah.
working in dressing props, where kind of in this intervening period of time where I transitioned into
Because you were
film.
working with Rich, weren't you?
I
And
was
then
working with Rich
then
a
you
lot,
were
and-
coming to work with me quite
Yeah.
a lot at that point.
Yeah.
When I was a charge hand dresser, and we did Cruella and did the House of Baroness together.
Yeah.
And then I'm trying to think, you were pretty much popping in and out of whichever job I was on at some
Yeah.
point intermittently,
Yeah.
but like quite
Annoying prop
constant.
masters when I wasn't wholly beholden to them.
Mm.
So they all want you to just be their
Yeah.
person, and then you go, "No, sorry, I'm busy. I've got something to do." But what do you mean you've got something to do? Well, I've got a life, I'm going to something else. Anyway, so Fiona in 2018, when we done Cruella, and I was thinking, actually, I'd really like to be the other side. I'd like to kind of be finding the things, not
Yeah,
putting the things in.
Mm.
She said one of the key lessons is not to use the internet for research, is to use
Mm.
books, because
Right.
books are editorially fact checked.
Yeah.
And so that, the information in them might be a bit out of date, but these days still, actually, because we are historically researching things, it's not out of date information because it's
Yeah.
information that was correct in the 1920s. And that's
Yeah.
what we
Yeah.
want it to be.
Yeah. It doesn't matter if it's changed now.
No.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm always looking for those reference materials.
So you still employ that today now for the big feature stuff that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
What sort of challenges do you face then when you're working on a bigger production and you say you mentioned there's a few more bits of red tape and a few more limitations? Like, how does that affect your job then?
Well, it's the dynamic of the people and who you're working with, how they like to work,
right.
which is not a natural situation for me. I've spent my entire life working for myself, so fitting in is a challenge, but it's something that I've had to work on quite a lot.
Yeah.
There was a period of time where I was quite involved in, and this is part of my own therapy, to when your world falls apart and you've got a huge business and you think, I'm going to be a success here, and it falls apart. I got into something called positive psychology, and I studied quite a lot of psychological traits and what have you. And there's a very interesting piece of research that you can do, which is called via strengths analysis. And so it's a set of 24 character traits that every human being has.
Okay.
And you fill out the thing, and it's on a scale of 1 to 5, do you think you're this or do you think you're that? And you go through, and it's 72 questions or something like it. And at the end it says, right, these are your 24 strengths in order. And there's no good or bad. It's just
Right.
that's what you're best at.
Yeah,
That's what
yeah.
you're worst at. That's it. And you're supposed to then include the top 5. If you can do things that involve those things within a week, then you'll be much happier, more fulfilled.
Okay.
And so creativity is always at the top for me, imagination, various things. And right at the bottom at that point, in 2018, when I'm thinking, right, I'm going into these hierarchical structures, teamwork was the worst thing that
Okay.
I could do. It now ranks up towards the top 10 because I've spent a lot of time working on it.
Okay. How did you work on it?
biting my tongue a bit, I suppose. Trying
I
to,
think I helped a little bit
Yeah.
with some of that.
yeah,
because
I'm
when,
sure you would
when
be.
we were doing with
I'd spent a lot of time working for James in those railway arches where he's the boss, and I can be subservient or lead a team, and then of course when he's coming to work for me, essentially, the roles have flipped.
Yeah.
But I understand that he doesn't. I'd like to think I can read a fellow colleague well enough to understand how to approach them in terms of making them feel welcome in the team, but also knowing how to ask them to do something for me because I'm in charge. So at which point I know James sort of struggles with that team thing a little bit. So it's kind of pushing him out into that deeper into that water that he doesn't enjoy, but not deep enough so it becomes uncomfortable. So when we were doing things like the House of Baroness, there's so much to think of, and we must have spent 2 or 3 months doing one set to this Disney movie. And there's so much going on that I don't have the capacity as like the team lead. I don't have the capacity to deal with everything that's happening all at the same time. So I need somebody with me who can deal with a specific set of problems that I don't really have time for, or would rather push them aside so I can concentrate on hanging in a mirror that weighs 2 tons. And what James became was the person that did all of the stuff that I didn't really want to do, but it was stuff that he was quite good at. When you need a moment of clarity to carry on your standard day, to hit your targets in terms of how many lights you're hanging, how much chain is going up, and we're talking about 80 foot in the air, so it's all very sort of difficult, and you have to, safety's paramount. But then there's also hundreds of people walking in and out of this set talking about fabric, plans, how high the stool should be, where the table should go, the glazes are in there putting glass in, somebody else is in there running power in, somebody else is driving through with the machine to do something
What's
else.
going in that room up there that is just there for a background.
And then you need if, like I always try to explain it with, like, if you're the right hand, you need someone who's good with their left hand, because I can't really do anything with that one, but if James is good with his left, then together I can do all of this stuff. I can talk to some of the departments that James struggles to communicate with, because I can do that. Can then do a bunch of stuff that I'm not particularly great with, or it's just too much stuff for my working day. So it's like, okay, you give him a set of tasks, at which point it helps with anxiety. If I know we all suffer from it a little bit here. If you know what your day looks like and what your tasks are, it's great. You can ramp that anxiety down by 40% because you know exactly what you have to achieve by the day, and it's like, great, perfect. I've got an hour for this, 30 minutes for that. Grab a sandwich, do that, do the other, and we sort of helped each other through that period where I was trying to develop my skills on a much grander scale in terms of the ability I could cope to manage with at any one time, and then understanding that when you're in those scenarios where it's too much, you have to have the ability to understand that you need help, and to not feel like you have to have ownership of everything and then begin to micromanage. You have to share that responsibility.
So you
cannot achieve
other people, and
you can't achieve it on your own. You can try, but you won't go to sleep, and it'll be awful. Whereas then you start to understand how building a team is important, and then it's no point having a team of people who are all the same. You need the A team. You need someone who can drive the van, who doesn't get on the plane. You need someone who's a nutter but has got medical training, and someone who can fly a helicopter,
someone that can
or whatever. But you need to build that. Everyone needs to love what they do and understand how to dress a set, but then everybody needs a slightly special set of skills in order for when that problem arises. You go, it's Lee. Send Lee in there. It's all to do with locks and tiny little things that I can't bear to even look at. But Lee will love that, because it's like looking at an engine. And I hate stuff like that. So anything that comes my way, anything like that, it's like, put it on Lee's list. Don't even talk to me.
And when you get them excited, you haven't got
You've got total ownership.
You haven't got to say the rest of it. They'll carry that out
because they know
passion.
They know what they're seeing is you being able to identify their skill set and then choosing exactly the right thing, which is setting off the door for me. Where you're going, oh my God, I love this stuff. I could do it all day, and then you do it quicker and you do it better than anybody else on set.
I think you mentioned it on another interview, or maybe when we were talking outside. But like, if you're having like a down day or something, and you're in a team and you might not necessarily know your place, or you're having an off week, but then suddenly the prop master will turn around and say, right, out of all you people, you're the best one for this job, and suddenly they perk up, and it's like, this is my time to shine.
Yeah.
And off they go, and they do their job, and they do it well, they do it with passion, and that's what's important, really. So what are you doing now with your buying? Tell us a bit more about where you are now with
Well, I mean, I haven't been strictly buying on a project since last summer. I mean, I did some stuff on Fortitude, Operation Fortitude, which is going to come out. It's World War II.
Okay.
Is that Ian? Was it Ian Fleming? Something Ian Fleming to do with that? Or
Yeah. No, it's to do with the subterfuge of pretending that we were going to invade via Normandy.
Right.
And so they had fake armies, and they had Patton standing in front of, armies of inflatable tanks and, people that didn't exist. And they succeeded in seeding all this information to the Germans.
It's like fake news, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. Where Hitler was convinced that, no, even when people were landing in Normandy, it's like, no, that's just a distraction, because the real thing, and it was, spies and double agents and blah, 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 blah. So that was felt really kind of comfortable for me, because, I live on a World War II warship. I kind of have lived.
You live on a World
War II warship. Let's move on from that.
Yeah, it's another podcast.
It's a whole other thing.
There's a whole other podcast.
Yeah.
With two ducks and, blah, blah, blah.
We'll get them on as well.
Yeah.
Just to find out the real story.
Yeah. Don't even go there. So, that's World War II's something that, as a boy, I was really interested in. So I read all the books. I had, Jane's fighting ships and light infantry and, all of
Yeah.
So I kind of knew all of about.
It's a specialist area.
And it is a specialist area. And when you go into a team, a set deck team, there is a sort of practicality to some of those things where it comes into military stuff, which, there is a gender thing, certainly of people my age. I don't know about younger people, but there is a gender thing with military stuff, that girls aren't quite as interested in it for whatever reason. And they're much better at certain things, like, I can't do softs and curtains and swags and stuff in the same way. And so it lends itself. There are certain jobs, if we kind of go backtrack slightly in terms of my first job as an action prop buyer, I was called up by Liz Griffiths when I was working in Wales, out of the blue. She'd found an email. She said, I found your email. And I was thinking, what? Send an email to anybody. Turns out I'd sent her an email in 2018 when I was talking to him about making a transition. It had sat in her junk mail for 3 years.
Right.
She'd found it just at the point where, I potentially needed my next job, and she needed a bloke to be a practical action prop buyer to come into a team of all girls, who was then able to go, well, guns things, because it was Luther, A Fallen Sun, and it was all about, radio trackers and machine guns and mobile phones and all of those kinds of things that, for me is, I know
comes
about
naturally,
that, naturally. So that then felt, sort of, I fell into that. And that's where, going back to what we were saying about mental health and fitting in with teams, I had to work with, I describe him as the blokiest bloke I've ever met. I mean, I love him to bits. Paul Oatway, who is a fantastic prop master and has worked on, huge projects. And it was like, right, this is a different type of person that I've had to deal with before. And so how do I adjust my behavior to, to try and fit in?
Yeah.
And it was, so I started paying a little bit more attention to the football. I, watched some boxing and, there were things that I maybe was interesting, but I paid a bit more attention to them so that we had something to talk about. And,
had a common ground.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like, if he watches or listens to this, there are various things that I feel that maybe I've pulled some slightly different things out from him, because he now has a little bit more of an understanding of what autism might be, because I'm high functioning Asperger's, what's now autism spectrum disorder. But I get triggered by certain things, certain environments, and he's become very good at going, why don't you go off and do that on your own? Find your space, and that was an understanding. And I feel like that, certainly in the industry, even in the last sort of 4 or 5 years, has moved on in terms of understanding.
Whereas it's a sign of times moving on for understanding, but also the sign of a good prop master in that you know someone inside out to a degree where you can understand when they're comfortable and when they aren't comfortable, essentially.
and the good thing about that is, we then went on to do 3 more projects, for three and a bit years. Some quite complex and challenging things in terms of, 2 of those were over. One was a project called Here with Robert Zemeckis, which was the span of the 20th century in one single room with one single fixed
That was
camera.
Tom Hanks, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Worth a watch. Yeah.
And then the other was the Sandman season 2, which was the history of humanity in essence. I mean, it went from ancient Greece through to the future, and all the different elements of what came into that, which were all quite challenging things as an action prop buyer, but interesting.
Yeah.
Because you got a load of different interesting stuff going on. So,
And then there's just to go back to Luther, to reference your toothbrush chess set, which we could probably
oh yes, well,
we could
yeah.
pop a picture of that
Yeah.
up.
No, the highlight of the career so far,
Yeah.
I would think, was that I, being a little green, I suppose, and sort of thinking outside the box.
And Luther's in prison. Just if you haven't seen it, but at this point, Luther
I haven't, no.
he's in prison.
Yeah,
He's basically got fingered and framed for some murder, and he's got sent inside. So he has he's in there, and he's in big trouble because everybody knows he's a copper.
yeah.
And the shit.
So I'd watched all 6 seasons of that religiously. A lot of it was filmed. My Railway Arches appeared in it twice because they filmed a lot in.
I mean, that's good. If you
London.
haven't watched that either,
Yeah.
Lisa's fantastic.
So there was, that I understood it. And
You
I
know the
watched
world.
it. A lot of the set decks hadn't necessarily seen all of it, didn't it?
Yeah.
I loved that show, and so I consequently got on really well with the director, Jamie Payne, and interacted with him quite a lot.
Which you would
shared
have to
quite
do
a
as an
lot of
action prop
things.
buyer, right? There's
Yeah.
a direct
In
link.
theory, I mean,
In
not
theory.
always.
Not
the time.
always, but
The prop master
supposedly.
might be in between, and Paul's very interested in it and likes to be involved in that, and certainly, there is a balance in it. But yeah, you're
talking with the director at
Yeah.
some point, yeah.
Yeah.
you're feeding in a lot of the key elements that somebody's actually going to be touching on screen, front and center, and making sure those are correct. They're in the right format. You've got multiples of them just in case somebody
And good
drops
quality
one.
ones as well.
Well, yeah, potentially.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you've got
I mean,
to buy- you've got to buy
I spend a lot
quality.
of time. I enjoy, and you've got to try and find the things that you enjoy. So, I had a personal shopper at Selfridges. We were buying all this fantastic stuff. It was great. It was really quite fun to do a lot of those things. So yeah, one of the elements was that Luther's in prison. I can't remember whether I'm not entirely sure whether it was even scripted. That I
don't
said,
think it was.
no, I
I think you
don't
made
think
it
it
up.
was scripted. That I thought, well, he'd have it because he's quite cerebral as a character. He's physical, but he's also cerebral. That's kind of the point. That he might have made himself a chess set in order to keep himself entertained. So I sort of put forward that idea, and everyone thought it was a good idea. And then I was told categorically by the set deck department that I was not to do this myself. That I was to get a prop buying prop make company, and we were we were using DB Props, I think. So I did my whatever. And then went about making it over a course of a weekend with bottle tops and toothpaste tubes and all the things that I could think of that were part of the dressing that were in the space that you get in prison.
Yeah.
And I made.
That you would feasibly make.
Yeah. And I got a bran flakes packet, I think, and cut it in half and drew the squares on with a biro and did everything. Brought it in on the Monday and I said, I just wanted to think the bishops, I wanted to do something a little different with the bishops, just so that they looked a little different. So the buyer said she'd never had a bill so small from DB Props because they just did the tiniest little thing that I wanted at the end, and it was a 60 quid bill, and that was it for the whole thing. So if we cut forward to the cast and crew screening, and there is my chess set, fully lit, for 2 seconds, close up. I mean, it's a perfect piece of product placement.
Yeah.
Pack shot, done. And
It's
I
like
turn
opens the
around,
scene or something.
and and I turn around, and there's Jamie Payne, the director, going in the back of shot, fully knowing that I was going to be super excited about
Yeah, yeah.
that.
At the
It's
time,
another
it
one
was
of those
great,
moments,
you know.
isn't it, where you can spend thousands and thousands of pounds
Yeah.
when you could just make it out of stuff in the rubbish.
Yeah, and you
That's
took
it.
a
And it
risk, didn't you? You
looked,
took a chance.
yeah, I
and,
did.
You know,
I-
it could have.
It was it.
But
It could
that's
have backfired.
that's knowing the script and knowing the environment
Yeah.
and knowing where you think you
Yeah.
can push it out towards in terms of
Yeah.
improving the scene.
Everybody else is focused on everything
Improving
else.
the
Yeah, I mean,
actor.
that's where I will always immerse myself in the characters and go, well, who is this?
Who's this guy?
You know,
Yeah,
who is
yeah.
this person and what is this stuff and what can I find in their world? So I will buy things that are in the world of, but not scripted and
Yeah.
not things. So
Like
that
method-
somebody
method
then,
buying.
so then somebody will say, you know, the standbys will go, oh, have you got, yeah, we've got one, we've got something that'll do that.
Yeah.
You know, I bought a bag. I was out once and I was struggling a bit to find things. I'd gone to the lanes, I think, in Brighton, and it really wasn't what it used to be. And I couldn't really find anything. But I found this Moroccan leather and sort of Aztec woven pattern bag.
Right.
And I thought it kind of fits in the world of Robin Wright's character. But, you know, it's like, yeah, okay, bought it. When I came back, it was dismissed. What have you got that for? Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Well, fine. I thought it was Unama. Cut forwards 2 months. Panic from set. Oh my God, we need a bag for Robin Wright. She's going to be going, she's asking for a bag. She's leaving. She needs to have a bag. What can we do? Well, we've got that one that I
Everybody hates.
set, Robin
Yeah.
Wright.
The one he poo-pooed.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
We didn't say that. He did put it. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. She loves it. She loves the bag. There you go. So, you know, you're sitting on that, and sometimes you do buy something and it never gets
Yeah,
used.
yeah.
And
It
quite
does
often
happen.
you'll go through the signing off process of something, toing and froing and designing and something, and it just doesn't go anywhere. It might arrive
Doesn't
on
see the
set
light
and
of
something-
day. Yeah.
and the process is, you know, is nuts of how far you go down that route to have something not used. But I always want to have more than we need.
Yeah.
So there's always those little things, and I
Got
will
the
always
options,
try and throw in. So in Luther, we had Luther was reading Nietzsche's Beyond Good and Evil. I bought a first edition of that,
Right.
for about £400, I think, leather bound. That was in Luther's set of books. And then the bad guy, Roby, had it on his desk, but he had the modern buy it from Amazon version of the same book.
Right.
And again, Jamie loved that. You know, that sort of
Yeah. Yeah.
duality. And because it was mentioned, I think it was mentioned somewhere. But yeah, it's, you know, planting those little details that, you know,
Well,
maybe
it helps.
everybody's ever
It
gonna
helps. It
notice.
helps the audience. It helps the actors. It helps everybody.
For any
When
students that are, you know, making short films and stuff, you know, it seems to me the advice is to go and buy these reference books. You know, going back to that, I think that's
Yeah.
quite a key thing to take from this.
Well, it's also
interview
to live
that's-
life. It's,
well,
it's
not
to pay
necessarily buy
attention
them. I
to-
suppose a lot of these reference books will exist probably on
Go to a
campus
library.
here or
Yeah.
library. You don't necessarily need to fork out to buy them.
Yeah.
There's a good chance you can just go pick them up somewhere. So if you're
Yeah.
doing something quite specific,
Or a boot sale or somewhere.
Yeah,
You
sure.
might find these boot sales hut somewhere.
or go to somewhere like the Victoria and Albert Museum because they'll
Right.
physically have those things.
Okay.
You know,
research,
I'm
I think is what we're saying. Isn't
yeah,
it?
it's, well, it's
research,
research.
yeah.
It's research if you don't know it.
Yeah.
But it's experience if you do, and the more you can experience life, the better. You know, I've had the benefit of traveling a lot and sucking up a lot of things, and I'm inquisitive, so I'll naturally go and walk around and look at. You know, I won't go to the museum. I'll go round the back and.
Anything but the internet, basically.
Yeah.
It's too easy to just go.
Well,
to
it's
the
not. Yeah,
internet.
but it isn't. It's easy to go there, but you're not what you're getting fed back to you is a massive load of guff.
Yeah.
And it's getting worse. I mean, I'm reading lots of things about AI and the fact that because there's so much AI generated guff on the internet, AI is now getting stupider because it's actually.
So the
Just
robots
feeding
kill
itself.
themselves in the
Well,
end.
I mean, that's the point, isn't it? Because they're
just feeding
feeding. They
themselves.
can only get
That's at the
information
end of
from
movie.
the
That's
internet.
the end of the movie.
Yeah.
That's it.
Great.
Okay.
We've written it.
Yeah.
The robots end up killing themselves. They tie their own
Yeah.
shoelaces together.
They confuse themselves and
Sure,
then
love them full.
turn themselves off. Go, I've had enough.
Brilliant.
So what's next for this year then for you? What's on the horizon?
I've spent quite a while. So Ben used to stay with me, And we would sit on the sofa and we would go, what's a really good prop house again? What doesn't take up a lot of room? What can you find? What does everybody always need?
Hmm.
So we came up with this idea of period electricals, which is light switches and plug sockets and things like that.
Okay.
So that has now officially launched.
Great.
You mentioned the 2 jobs that we've worked on. One of them
Yep.
we technically worked on together, but never actually crossed paths.
Correct.
Which was with
Shelter.
Shelter with
Jason Statham.
Jason Statham, where I was flown to Ireland to put rusty switches in boathouses and what have you. So that
It's
has
so
now,
niche, but it's so important, isn't it?
No, absolutely. And look, I've got 5,000 pieces, and every time somebody phones up, we go, oh God, I can. There's a million things that you need. You need to try and find. The weirder, the better. So my entire life is really about going out and trying to find weird stuff that nobody's got.
Yeah.
Traveling the world, which is, brilliant. I had a fantastic trip to Japan last year, buying
Okay.
light switches and plug sockets, much to the amusement of all the people in Japan. Like, what are you doing?
Walking around with a shopping
But
bag.
the great,
full of-
I mean, the great thing is that I walked into an electrical wholesaler's there. I found it on my last day. I walked past a window and went, hold on, there's a display there with light switches. And in Japan, lots of those sorts of shops, it's just a patio door that you slide open.
Yeah.
Someone's
There's
front
two-
room.
Yeah.
There's 2 guys in there kind of, can I help you? And Google Translate now, you just type something in and hold it up and then go, oh,
Yeah.
they could not understand why someone would be there wanting to buy conduit boxes for Japanese light switches.
From decades ago or whatever.
No,
Are
they're
they
modern ones. But I mean,
Okay.
they're not broadly changed. But the thing is, they're American, but they're the same as American, but the switches go sideways, not up and down.
Right.
So they're quite distinctive. So I'd been asked by somebody to find one a few months before, which is why I went, well, we had to use an American one and turn it on its side in order to try and make it look
Yeah.
vaguely like what they were trying to reproduce. And that was the excuse I needed to get on a plane to Japan.
So if anyone's making a short film at the minute and they need
Make
to,
it Japanese.
Yeah, well,
make
we've
it
got-
Japanese or
We've got American, we've
Talk-
got
talk to
Japanese, we've got
James.
French, we've got German.
yeah.
The German, I mean, interestingly, I've found a guy in East Germany. We've got some German things on. They've almost constantly been out. German
Yeah.
mid 20th century German Bakelite switches, very popular.
So we can post all of that period electrical.
And post some links. Yeah.
Stuff, yeah,
If you're
and-
interested in making if you are in the current process of making something, then give you a shout, because
Yeah.
switches and sockets, they do have their place and they are
Yeah.
important.
And then
especially if they're in
there's
action.
sort of also all action props that's
Yeah.
kind of operating too, really. Just
Yeah.
a quick
Yeah,
nod
I mean,
on
it's
that.
not so there's a huge amount of work. If you imagine, like, every item realistically needs to be photographed, documented, coded, and put onto a system. An old friend and colleague of mine has built us a bespoke prop house system that
Right.
also then has integrated paperwork, and it runs through the whole process of everything, loss and damage, integrating photographs, everything. So that's done for period electricals pretty much. We're adding in new stock, but it's pretty much done. All action props, which is the other business, it's established as a business. It rents things out.
Yeah.
We've got quite a good stock of things. We haven't gone through that inventory process at the moment, so it's a little bit manual.
I mean, the whole punches would take probably 4
Yeah.
weeks alone to log those.
Yeah.
things,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
What we tend to do is find a willing and able action prop buyer, kidnap them, throw them into a shed and go, knock yourself out. And they root around and find piles of things. And so, at the moment, it's just sort of friends, colleagues
Yeah.
thing that people know about. It's not fully promoted,
But it's getting there.
but it's
Yeah,
getting
It's
there.
getting there.
You know,
yeah.
I mean, I don't think we'd be able fully to cope if it suddenly was really popular with people. It would be overwhelming because of the
Yeah.
manual nature of stuff. But we've got 90 suitcases out on a job at the moment, and
90 suitcases.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I've got a pretty good collection of trunkies at the moment. That seems to be my obsession. You know what a
Kids
trunkie is?
With wheels.
The little
Oh.
colourful things.
Yeah, like a dinosaur.
I've got
Well, you buy
London.
trunkies and
Yeah,
you-
London buses, giraffes, unicorns, rainbows.
What would you rather be known as, the trunky guy or the light switch guy?
Well, maybe the trunky guy.
Maybe we
The
could start
trunky
calling
guy.
him Trunky.
Trunky.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Well, thank
mean,
you.
it-
very-
yeah, so trunky guy.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that that is about to go through a sort of a little marginal process of promotion based on the obsessive collections of things to go, like, I've actually got more, like, hole punches than Subai, or I've got more
Right.
staplers than Stuart Learmonth. Whatever we find that we've got, I've got 156 alarm clocks, because there was a period of time where I obsessively collected alarm clocks until I got two the same, and then I had to stop. And so I
was it.
realised once I had two big Bens that were exactly the same.
Game over.
Game over.
Game
And I
over.
stopped, and I've not bought an alarm clock since. But I have got 156, and I challenge pretty much any prop house to have 156.
Okay.
Yeah.
On that note, yeah, the challenge is open.
Yeah.
If you do, please get in touch.
Yeah, please get in touch.
James, thank you very much for today. It's been an incredible insight, and good luck with the business.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for coming in.
You can like and subscribe on YouTube now, I think. And you
Yes,
can follow
Instagram.
us Instagram, and email us at info@theproproom.co.uk if you want to ask any questions.
Drop a comment, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Thank you.